Welcome into the Inside Scoop. We are live from Nashville, Tennessee. Today is Wednesday, May 14th, and what a week for recruiting it has been. Number one overall off the board, more to come. We're going to talk all about it today. There's just so much going on, but before we get into it, you guys, if you've watched one of these Inside Scoop shows, then jump on board, hit subscribe. We need you guys to jump on board. All right. Today's show, we're going to talk about what is next, the next step for Oregon, what's the next step for Georgia. We're also going to talk some Florida Gator recruiting. They got a big official visit weekend. Gators only got one commit, but there could be more coming soon. But first, let's talk about the biggest developments in the college football recruiting world. And there was really just one that we need to share today, but I got a few for you. But the one big one was the number one recruit in the nation. Jackson Cantwell made a shocking decision yesterday. Were you here? Were you here at the On3 Recruits channel when Jackson Cantwell put on the hat of the Miami Hurricanes, not the Georgia Bulldogs, not the Oregon Ducks? It was Miami. In the end, Pete Nako, Steve Wiltfong, they got it right. We heard the rumblings about 48 hours before. Miami was gaining steam. And then yesterday at Nixa High School in Nixa, Missouri, Jackson Cantwell put the hat on for Miami. Let's roll the moment he committed.
To University of Miami.
The hat doesn't fit. That's a big boy right there, and he made his commitment known to the world. It is over. Jackson Cantwell is heading to Miami. That was an exciting moment. Actually, let's check in at one of the most famous establishments in South Florida, the Elbow Room, for their reaction.
This time, I'd like to announce that I will be committing to University of Miami.
All right. That's not the Elbow Room, but you get it. All right, here's a clip of Mario. This is a real clip of Mario Cristobal reacting. He was at the ACC Media Week. I don't know what they're doing. It's in the Panhandle of Florida, I believe, and Mario Cristobal stepped out of one of the meetings, and here's the video.
Let's go! Enjoy. Go in there. Let's go! Let's go, brother. Come on, man. Let's do this. Thank you, brother, for believing. Thank you for your trust. Thank you for your confidence. It's a kick-ass ceremony. Have a ball, man. All you got to do is get a little free time. Enjoy it.
That was pretty cool. That was the actual moment that Mario Cristobal was watching on the live stream when Jackson Cantwell put on the Miami hat, shows the shirt, does the thing. I mean, you can tell it means a lot to Mario Cristobal because he puts in a lot of effort and he's in a lot of these big battles. Of course, Miami doesn't win them all, but they win their fair share, and they won a big one on Tuesday. Jackson Cantwell, the number one overall player in the On3 industry rankings, is heading to Miami. What a huge day it was. You could go watch the whole video. We got about 45 minutes of it on the live stream. It was a great time, and we're going to have more commitments here on the On3 Recruit channel, so make sure you guys are subscribed. All right, let's move on. New prediction for another five-star offensive tackle, the number one offensive tackle. He's off the board, so why not turn our attention to the number 2 ranked offensive tackle in America, Emmanuel Ihenacho. In just moments after Jackson Cantwell announced that decision where he picked Miami over Oregon and Georgia, Steve Wiltfong put in a prediction for the Ducks to land Ihenacho. Now, he's out of the DMV area. This recruitment, I don't think is going to end anytime soon. I think we could go into August, maybe even into early fall before Ihenacho makes a decision, but I think all signs are now pointing, and our guys at Scoop Duck have already put in their predictions for Ihenacho, but to see Steve Wiltfong do it on the same day Jackson Cantwell decides, I think it means something. Also, and another prediction for the number 1 player in the state of New York, wide receiver Messiah Hampton. He is now projected to land at Oregon by Steve Wiltfong as well. So, Duck fans, I know we get on here a lot and tell you guys not to worry, but don't worry. There's more coming. I mean, they landed Richard Wesley over the weekend, so we see this a lot with Dan Lanning. He likes to get into these big heavyweight battles, and just much like Mario Cristobal, he wins his fair share. So Dan Lanning now in what we see as pole position for the number 2 ranked offensive tackle in America. All right. The top 10 rankings. We have a shakeup here. We got Miami inside the top 10. Now, of course, USC still holding that top spot. The Trojans are loaded. They are locked in, and there could be more to come this summer. LSU at number 2. Ohio State now at 3. We got Notre Dame at 4. Oregon at 5. Georgia had both Oregon and Georgia had a real opportunity to move inside, maybe even the top 3, but they both missed on Jackson Cantwell, and that's why we see Miami now in there at number 8. They bumped Bama a spot to 9. Then you got Clemson. I'm watching. There's a team outside the top 10 in Tennessee sitting there at number 12 that I'm watching. They could definitely see themselves inside this top 10. What do you guys think? I mean, we've had so many commitments over the last couple weeks, and there's so many more to come. Who do you think is ultimately going to finish number 1 overall? Ohio State, Georgia? Is it going to be USC, LSU? Let me know. Comment section below. Let's talk a little Georgia recruiting. Hey, you can't land all of the 5 stars, but Georgia does their best to land as many as they can. Jackson Cantwell, it goes to Miami, but the best way to get over missing on a 5-star, a scavenger hunt. And that's exactly what we're going to have in Athens this weekend. Kirby Smart bringing in some talented prospects. A couple official visitors I want to hit on first. We'll start with the 5-star offensive lineman. Great time to bring him in. Darius Gray. Now, Rusty, he's trending to LSU. What does Georgia need to do on this trip?
Well, the first thing they do is get him on campus, and that's you don't get him on campus without that. Young man coming out of Virginia, he'll be in town this weekend. Georgia gets really one of the first shots as this momentum starts picking up with this. It's crazy to say, Josh, that like here we are mid-May, and now it's go time. Like all these official visit weekends, I've never seen Georgia have this many this early. It tells you how sped up it is. But if you're going to get someone like Darius Gray, you got to get him on campus. Georgia's got a chance to just kind of show him this weekend what's around Athens.
Yeah, they're bringing in upwards of 8, 9 official visitors, and we're still in the month of May. Yeah, you're right. This is like what we see in mid-June. This is
Yes.
prime recruiting territory right here now in May. Let's talk a little wide receiver. We got 2 of them coming in. Ryan Mosley out of Carrollton, Georgia, and Jalen Lott out of Texas. Probably a little bit more ground to make up on Lott. Do I have that right?
Yeah, I would imagine so right now. And again, that goes in the same area with Darius Gray. If you're going to get a player like this, you got to bring them in. You're going to sit down. When you leave this weekend, Jalen Lott, all his questions have to be answered about Georgia. That's all of it. Where I'm going to live, how will you develop me, what's the academic support, what's the NIL type package here, what are we looking at? All those questions have to be kind of answered. You leave no stone unturned. So you get a player like that coming in from Texas. I think Georgia understands how important this visit is. If you look at Ryan Mosley, this is a kid they've been on for a long time. Out of Carrollton, some people like him at DB. I think Georgia likes him best at wide receiver. Played with Juju Lewis. It's a kid that's really explosive, playmaker. James Coley has been locked in here a while. I really like where Georgia sits with him going into this official visit.
All right, one more OV we got to hit on. That's linebacker Nick Abrams out of Maryland. He's going to be on campus. Who's Georgia's biggest competition here?
Whoever wants to be, I think. You look at Nick Abrams, this is a guy that's a take for whoever these visits are. The most important thing for Nick Abrams is Glenn Schumann went up there last week, spent some time with he and his family, went to dinner with those guys. This is a kid at Georgia. You got guys like Xavier Griffin, committed to USC in-state. He's a kid at Georgia's recruiting. Tyler Atkinson, 30 minutes up the street, maybe number 1 linebacker in America. They're on him hard. But Georgia's also made Nick Abrams a priority. Glenn Schumann is locked in there. He's done a really good job with guys he's been locked in on. I'm very interested to see what happens right here after this visit, because I can tell you follow the footsteps and you follow the visits. Glenn Schumann's put in some time on Nick Abrams up in Maryland.
Yeah. All right. One unofficial visit that really piques my interest is Kamari Brooks out of Bogart, Georgia, 6'3", 230-pound edge. This seems like a fierce battle between Bama and Georgia. How important is this visit this weekend?
This visit for him, Josh, I think since January, I think this is his 12th or 13th visit to Georgia. People might go, whoa, what are you talking about? He's only about 15 minutes from campus. He is right outside of Athens in North Oconee, defending state champions, great program there. But listen, Alabama and Christian Robinson are not going away easy right here on him. They've got him recruited. He's probably one of their top edge guys, but this is a guy that Georgia's been locked in on. I saw him play in the state championship game. After I left that state championship game, I was like, this guy is different caliber. I think Georgia recognizes that. This might be their top targeted edge in the 2026 class.
All right, let's circle back to that Jackson Cantwell decision that went in Miami's direction. What's next? What's the focus? If you're a Dogs HQ reader, who are you telling them to focus on when it comes to offensive line targets?
Well, they're going to have one in this weekend, and they're going to have a young man out of Raven Gap High School, Wilson Zaire. I think I pronounced his name. Auburn and Michigan's involved. This is a 6'6", 280-pound tackle, and this is the guy that's going to be on official. I haven't written a lot about him. This wasn't a reaction of yesterday. This was already a done deal. Okay. I think when you start looking nationally, you start talking about a guy that's already been on campus, Malachi Lee. He's already taken his OV, young man from out of Hawaii. I know this. I told this after that visit. I'm not sure that Georgia gets him, but Georgia's a lot better situation than I thought here. Stacey Searles flew all the way. The first day he was able to go, he went all the way to Hawaii. People are like, man, well, that's not a hard thing to do. You only get 1 day there. So you have to 1 day of travel, you get spent. There's a lot too, just spending 12, 14 hours with a young man. They've already used their official visit. This is what I want to watch here. I know his June is booked up with a lot of schools. Can Georgia get him back to campus maybe for an unofficial? Because I can tell you he was a priority going into this week. I think he's even more of a priority. Obviously, you look at Akini Oboko out of North Carolina. His brother's at Georgia. He's at South Garner. He's up in Garner, North Carolina. His brother's there. Notre Dame, Clemson, Georgia, all in a battle for this guy. 6'6", 285 pounds. Been on campus a lot. That's another guy that a lot of people in Georgia bring his name up. Obviously, with the connection with his brother already at Georgia. That's not a slam dunk. He ends up there, but this is a target that Georgia definitely would love to have.
All right. Well, Georgia's sitting with the 6th ranked class in America. Looking for more this weekend with the scavenger hunt. Guys, go check out Dogs HQ. They have a ton of information about this weekend. We'll see you later, Rusty. Appreciate you.
Thanks, Josh.
Let's talk some Oregon Ducks recruiting. Less than a week after Max and I were on here telling Oregon Duck fans not to worry about anything in recruiting, they miss on another 5-star. And guess what? Me and Max are back to tell Oregon Duck fans, don't worry about a thing in recruiting. All right, Max. So we saw a familiar sighting this week. We saw Oregon miss on a 5-star, but right afterward, we saw another prediction for another 5-star at the same position. Last week, it was Jared Curtis. They missed on him, and he went to Georgia. And Oregon caught a crystal ball for Ryder Lyons. Now we miss on Jackson Cantwell, and we see an Oregon pick go in for Emmanuel Iheanacho, the number 2 ranked offensive tackle in America. So what's the latest on Iheanacho? Because I don't think that he's about to commit. Do you?
No, I don't think that he's anywhere close to a decision right now. I want to say that there were reports of a late summer decision, maybe in August, but I haven't been able to confirm that myself. And let's not forget, Josh, Oregon did land a 5-star over the weekend, but I know we're talking about offensive line. So with Manny Iheanacho, this is a guy that Oregon has prioritized for a while. He hasn't been out to campus that many times. I think he's only been twice, as a matter of fact. Not dissimilar from the Cantwell situation, but they got him back on campus for an official visit. I fully expect Oregon to get an official visit for Manny Iheanacho. During his recruiting process, the coaching staff did go out to see him in Baltimore during the spring evaluation period here. So they are doing the right things as far as getting that FaceTime with him. And I'll be honest, Josh, I did hear some rumblings from one of my sources well before the Cantwell situation, just about Manny Iheanacho maybe being the guy that Oregon was going to prioritize a bit more, which is a little interesting given the Missouri connection there, obviously, with Dan Lanning. But kind of like we saw with Curtis and Ryder Lyons, similar here, we have Cantwell and Iheanacho. You felt, and it continues to feel like Oregon's going to get one of those 2 5-star guys. And Alik Terry's been doing a tremendous job here in this one.
Yeah, you know Oregon's recruiting at a high level when they miss on a 5-star and only get a prediction for another 5-star to replace that one. So we got to watch and see on Emmanuel Iheanacho. We're going to keep a close eye on that one. But, you know, if you're a Duck fan, you're looking at this offensive line class and you're saying, well, we missed on Cody Green. Now we missed on Jackson Cantwell. So besides Iheanacho, who else do you think right now Duck fans need to focus on the offensive line?
There's a couple big names, and I actually got to see one of them over the weekend when I traveled out to Salt Lake City for the Under Armour camp, and that's Jax Tanner, an interior offensive lineman from Meridian, Idaho, Rocky Mountain High School. He is a really, really quality offensive lineman that the Ducks appear to be turning the heat up on. It looks like they're battling BYU in that recruitment, and I think some other ones to keep an eye on. He's a Mission kid, so he is a little bit down the road, but I think that's still a guy that Oregon covets here in the 2026 recruiting class. But aside from Manny Iannacho, I think you also have to mention Kelvin Obot from the state of Idaho as well. He is a 4-star in the On3 industry rankings out of Fruitland, and he's an offensive tackle. You also have Tommy Tofi from the Bay Area, in Northern California, San Francisco, California, Archbishop Reardon. He's another target that Alik Terry and the Ducks have been on for quite a while. I think those are the main names that you have to keep an eye on here when you're looking at what's next for Oregon on the offensive line here in 2026.
All right. Let's kind of circle back to the quarterback position because we saw that pick go in for Rider Lions right after Jared Curtis goes to Georgia, but there's no movement there. But we did see Oregon offer a new quarterback, Matt Ponatoski, out of Cincinnati. So now that the dust is kind of settled at the quarterback position, we got a little time now to breathe. How do you see this shaking out?
That was an interesting offer, Josh, because he's in the state of Ohio where Oregon is starting to get a little bit better results on the recruiting trail. Also a fairly late offer, if you want to call it that, with so many of the top quarterbacks already off the board and committed, with Rider Lions being the top uncommitted prospect at the position right now. But Ponatoski worked out for Will Stein. He said that in the little announcement with his offer. He worked out for offensive coordinator Will Stein, and then he got the offer from the Ducks. And I think that I'm not ready to put a prediction in or say anything overly confident about the Ducks landing him, but Oregon is one of those offers that I think moves the needle for just about any recruit. What's going to be interesting with Ponatoski is how baseball factors into things. I was talking to a source not too long ago that said, Max, this guy's probably a top 10 pick type of talent. He has the potential to get drafted right out of high school. So who even knows if he's going to really pursue football seriously, but that's a really gifted quarterback. He's produced tremendous results. He was the Gatorade Player of the Year in Idaho and won the Mr. Football Award over Tavian St. Clair, the Ohio State quarterback, early enrollee, who's a tremendous player in his own right. So I think it's going to be interesting to follow how this thing develops with Ponatoski. Maybe he gets out to Eugene for a visit. I think that's obviously the next step here. But I've been trying to get an interview myself to get some more updates on kind of where he's at in his process. But anytime a big school like that enters the mix, I think maybe it gives a recruit an opportunity to maybe pump the brakes a little bit, and it just shows them, hey, like I'm the real deal if these kind of schools are coming after me. So with Rider Lions being a Michigan kid as well, he's obviously a little bit down the line, and I think the Ducks are still going for a quarterback here in the 26 class.
So what do you think the timeline is for Rider Lions and his commitment?
Yeah, I talked to Rider Lions last week, and I got an interview with him over on Scoop Duck. He has some official visits set. You got USC, Oregon, and BYU here in the month of June next month. But when I asked him about his timeline, he was pretty candid about it. He just said as soon as possible. So he doesn't have a set date right now, but it seems like he's leaning towards coming off the board sooner rather than later. He also kind of added that if he does make his commitment before official visit season, maybe he'll see himself just taking an official visit to that school and moving forward from there. So Rider Lions is kind of that big fish for Oregon here in the 26 class, but because of the timeline with him and the mission trip, I think they still want to get a true 2026 quarterback here, Josh.
All right. Lots of developments in this Oregon recruiting world. Max Torres from Scoop Duck, thank you for dropping by the Inside Scoop today.
Thanks for having me, Josh.
We're going to talk a little Florida Gator recruiting. Gators were one of the hottest recruiting teams coming out of 2025, but in 26, Corey Bender with Gators Online, they only have one commitment. But this weekend, we got a big visit weekend in Gainesville. Who's maybe a target or two that you think the Gators could land? Maybe not this weekend, but land them.
Yeah, I think overall you got to look in the secondary. I think Chauncey Kendon out of Sarasota Booker is one of them. He last visited he visited this spring, but before that, the last time he was on campus was for the season opener against Miami. Obviously, that game didn't go too well, so Florida kind of slid down his list in recent months. Then they had coaching changes in the secondary, but then Deron Wilson, the new secondary coach, came on board, was able to convince Kendon to come on campus. Made a really good first impression on him, and then not long after that, Florida landed in his top 6 and got an OV set for this weekend. Mm-hmm. And I think the other thing to mention too is when he went to school not that long ago, we spent about 6 to 7 hours there and really showed his camp that, hey, we're serious about recruiting. I know obviously it's going to be an uphill battle. Schools like Miami, Georgia, LSU, Auburn, Florida State, a lot of schools in the mix. But Florida's kind of been rising over the last month or so. They obviously have some ground to make up. But I think this weekend can go, be a saw Florida finish last cycle as well. They may have fell short earlier in the year, but they kept their foot on the gas pedal, finished with a really, really good class. I think he's one of them. And then the other one is obviously Justice Fitzpatrick, a DB out of Fort Lauderdale, St. Thomas Aquinas. And he's working with less schools, probably around 5 right now. But I think there's more kind of mystique in his recruitment as far as who's really ahead. I know there's been some buzz with the nearby Miami Hurricanes. They're in the mix. A lot of big name schools, but he visited, just like Kendon, he visited in the spring, met with Deron Wilson. His family loved his coaching style and how detail oriented he was as far as his teaching technique and stuff like that. And, after that one visit, he told me, he's like, yeah, I'm definitely going to take an OV to Florida. Billy Napier's heavily involved in that recruitment too, reaching out to his family every week. So I think those are 2 guys where Florida's playing catch up with right now. But when you consider proximity and how good their spring visits went, I think over time, Florida can definitely kind of make a move for them.
All right. So the headliner of this big visit weekend has got to be physically Felix Ojo. I mean, he is just massive. He's also the only 5-star on campus this weekend. Trending heavily to Texas on the recruiting prediction machine. But if I were to peg one out-of-state team that has a great shot at landing him, I think it's the Florida Gators. How have they gotten a foot in the door in Ojo's recruitment?
Yeah, man. So it's another guy. They kind of jumped in late. Jonathan DeCoster, the co-offensive line coach at Florida, he's been relentless in Florida's pursuit. Even if he came for the orange and blue game, that was his first visit to Florida. And before that, the month prior, they were just kind of always, their foot was on the gas pedal, just trying to get him on campus. They were able to do that. But even after the orange and blue game, we weren't too optimistic because he wanted to make a commitment before the end of summer. And I hate to use the term hat on the table, but that's kind of like what the vibe was with him. Like, hey, he likes Florida, but it's going to be not enough time to play catch up. And then I think this official visit weekend, it started with him because Florida typically doesn't do OVs this early. And I think with a talent like that, especially with Ojo having a full list of OVs in June, they kind of had to kind of readjust their thinking as far as like, hey, if we have to get this guy on campus, we have to really change stuff around. We can't just kind of just be stuck on our plan. So they said, hey, let's just make an official visit weekend and get him in May 16th. And he was by himself on the calendar for a while. And then over the last couple of weeks, a lot of these big name guys joined him on the list. So I think with Ojo, he's the one that kind of made this official visit weekend. Florida decided to change things up. They said, hey, we just got to get him on campus no matter what. And I think right now it's one of those guys, even if Florida doesn't get later this summer, I think they're going to keep their foot on the gas and try to get him. Florida wants to sign 5 offensive linemen this cycle, and they're telling him, hey, you can come in. We're replacing a lot of guys after this year. We think you could be a day one early contributor, and that's something obviously any player wants to hear. But like you said, Josh, Texas, the Ohio States of the world, they're probably in a better spot right now. So I think Florida overall probably has to knock it out of the park this weekend.
Speaking of knock it out of the park, 4-star edge Luke Wafel, he's going to be in town, number 1 prospect in the state of New Jersey, number 51 overall. He's borderline 5-star prospect, and he's been making the rounds. He's been taking a lot of visits. What does UF have to do this weekend with Wafel?
Yeah, man, when I look at the official visit list, I think he's the one guy that's probably the least likely, just in my opinion. Florida got him on campus this spring. They offered him on the visit. So, a lot of other big schools were already high on his list. And I think overall they're able to OV and obviously be able to get him in this weekend. But his brother plays at Penn State. You have all these other big schools on his list. He's another kid who has a lot of OVs on the calendar coming up. So
Yeah.
I think right now, obviously, it's obviously a big sign to get him on campus. I think another thing too is Steve Spurrier Jr., who's now on Florida staff. He actually was a roommate with Waffle's dad. Believe it was at Duke back in the day. So there is some familiarity there.
Mm-hmm.
They like the culture that Billy Napier's instilling on campus. But when you look at the big picture, especially with all these other schools slated to get OVs after Florida, I think it's a pretty big long shot, but you just never know in recruiting.
All right, the last big name I want to talk to you about, and there's more. Go to GatorsOnline.com for the full list of visitors that are going to be in Gainesville. But I want to talk wide receiver Calvin Russell, because I was talking to Chad Simmons earlier today about Russell. And, he was saying it's not necessarily a head-to-head battle with UF and Miami. It might be Georgia and Miami here. Does UF have room to make up as they head into this visit weekend? Inside Scoop listeners, I got to tell you about a company that makes this show possible. It's Rhoback Activewear. The only way to describe Rhoback is best fit, best feel. And for those who are not familiar with Rhoback, they are completely changing the game with their incredibly comfortable activewear. Rhoback has released so many items within their new licensed game day collection, and it's our favorite. With novel polo designs, clean hoodie, and quarter zip designs from some of your favorite schools, it's definitely worth checking out. Nobody else in the market is pairing these level of custom designs with this quality of activewear. Rhoback's everyday shorts or their Delta Performance pants are the perfect pairing as well. They are both super comfortable. They have an elastic waistband and a great fabric that is made to have the appearance of a nice short look, but the comfort for everyday movement. Rhoback also has been proudly leading the NIL charge, having signed partnerships with multiple college football stars, past and present, and are becoming the go-to brand for college athletes across the country. So use code JOSH on Rhoback.com for a generous 20% off all new custom orders through the end of this week. Let's spell it out for you. RHOBACK.com. That's 20% off all performance polos, shorts, and more with promo code JOSH.
Yeah, no, it's funny. When I look at the list, he's kind of like the dark horse guy as far as like who I could see Florida making a move for. He doesn't do many interviews, so it's hard to get a gauge on him. And I know guys in Miami. I believe his mom attended there, and I don't know what sport she played, but you have Syracuse that's heavily in the mix. So it's kind of one of those lists you look at where I think any school can maybe slip up to the top or in the next month and a half. But yeah, no, it's a guy, 6'6". Billy Gonzalez loves the big body wide receivers, guys that can go up and kind of high point the ball. Dallas Wilson comes to mind from last cycle. So yeah, and I think he's a big priority for Florida. I know they're definitely going to be rolling out the red carpet for him. I definitely would put them behind probably the Miamis, the Georgia, and Syracuse. Yeah, I think those three schools probably are definitely ahead of Florida right now. But I think, the SEC appeal, being in the state of Florida, and I know Florida, one thing they always do a good job is really impressing the family as a whole on these OVs. I know his mother will be up there. Remember Javari Flowers, who's his teammate at Miami Northwestern. He recently signed with Florida. There's a familiar face up there, so that's something to keep in mind. But, yeah, I think Florida has ground to make up, man. But I think when you and I reconnect the next time, he could be a guy that could be, rising with Florida, and mutual interest could really be rising because he's an elite talent, and I know Florida really wants him in the class.
All right, so UF sitting with one commitment. I'm a little surprised just at the strength of UF's momentum coming out of that 2025 cycle. Will Griffin committed, very good quarterback, number 17 overall in the country. Are you a little surprised that they don't have more commits? Is there any reason for concern?
Yeah, no, it's surprising. It's definitely, just Florida should probably recruit itself. From the academic standpoint, I think you hit it on the head, Josh. The way they finished last cycle on the field and in recruiting, you would kind of think that would have carried over more as far as where we're at. But at one point, they did have around 5 guys. It's kind of crazy. You think USC has like over 25. It's like hard to compare them to anyone. Right. But they did have Jalen Waters, who obviously flipped to Miami, and that was because of a coaching change at Florida. Devin Jackson was in the class for a while. He decommitted. I think he could very well end up back in Florida's class. Mm-hmm. Isaiah Williams, we can have a whole show on that whole situation.
He made a stop.
Yeah. So that was so obviously that was one. Obviously he's committed. He's an elite talent. So we just, even him, I know he's made 5 commitments, but we haven't heard anything that makes us believe that Florida is going to stop recruiting him. Mm-hmm. So I know it's a guy Florida really wants. He loved Florida as a kid. Wow. And obviously Will Griffin, he has the family ties at Florida. But, yeah, when you look at it, man, you would think they would have more commits at this time. But I think the other part is too, getting through spring. So many of these kids are so close to taking all these OVs, and I think a lot of them. I mean, when you're a big name school like Florida, you're competing against the top guys who obviously are pretty NIL focused, and there's a lot that goes into these decisions. You compare all the schools you're going on, all these visits you're going on. So I think when you get through the spring, they're like, hey man, like why commit now when I'm about to take these OVs in a month? So it's kind of like you're in that weird window where it's like, unless you're really cemented as like the number one school, a lot of these kids are going to be like, well, man, I'm so close to OVs. Let me just take them just to make sure. But yeah, man, I would have thought even in January, February time, March, they would have got a few more guys on board. But I think by the time the end of summer rolls around, because I think you look at Florida's big board, they're trending for a lot of big name kids. It's just been a slower start than usual. So I think by the end of summer, it should pick up quite a bit.
Yeah, I agree. I think by the time official visits roll around in June, end of June, we're going to see some more additions to this class. Thank you, Corey Bender, for joining us. Go check out Gators Online. They do a heck of a job covering Florida Gator football and recruiting.